Hey everybody, so a friend of mine asked me about how much all the dynamic physical labor I do in my lifestyle here in a tropical third world off-grid self-sufficient scenario. How much that plays into volume for like uh, strength training, bodybuilding scenarios. It's a great question. He's a friend of mine that knows some of the things about my private lifestyle, digging ponds with shovels, hacking your way through the jungle with a machete and an axe, and just a lot of dragging logs, lifting boulders, a lot of stuff I do on a norm out here, and it's on very, very steep land. How that plays into it, and you know, it's a great question because it definitely has reduced my volume. One, because you don't want to sweat out tons and tons of electrolytes all week, every day, over and over with lots and lots of volume on top of all the labor and all the sweat and all the energy output there. So you have to kind of recalibrate what you're doing. But I will say this, I do respond better to about half the volume I used to, or even less. And honestly, the main reason, and I know there's many factors here, but I think the biggest probably chunk of what makes that difference is that my lifestyle has made me more insulin sensitive. I honestly think that's what it is. I think because of the way I move everything dynamically on a regular basis in a very real, functional, like everything I do is on very steep terrain with vines tripping me and I'm climbing trees, and it's just every kind of real movement, the way the human body is designed to function in its environment, in a very rugged environment. I think that's really made me more insulin sensitive. So if your most anabolic hormone, which they say insulin is working better, um, you could say that all this dynamic labor is very complementary. Another thing I would throw in here is that obviously certain muscle groups in the lifestyle I live get hit harder than others. Certain types of work I do, I'll go out and clear a section of land or work a section of land with like two machetes, and for hours basically the way I'm using those machetes creates like a lot of burn and fatigue in like the delts, other time, and everything here is very steep. So, the functional strength and coordination of my lower body, all the leg muscles clear down into every individual bone in my feet, all that is improved, which helps me train those muscles better when I do train them. Okay, so the mind muscle connection has gotten better there because of the dynamic, challenging environment where nothing is ever level, nothing is ever flat, nothing is ever easy. There's almost nowhere where I live here that it isn't a hike to even try to walk. Okay. Um, so it's the kind of land most people would consider very difficult terrain, but it's also very rich and beautiful and private and secluded and wonderful. And I'm thankful for it. And I enjoy the dynamic challenge of it. So those are all factors that have played into it a lot. So if you're someone who does a considerable amount of manual labor on a regular basis, you can definitely factor that in to how you train different muscle groups and how much volume you use. Let's say you're someone like I use a wheelbarrow sometimes, although the land here is too steep in most places. But um, just to give an example, say you're hauling concrete around in a wheelbarrow for 8 hours a day. Your traps and parts of your back, mostly the traps, your forearms, you're using these things on a regular basis. So they're getting a lot of volume right there. So when it comes to training them with like weights, you'd be, let's just stick to the traps. A guy that uses a wheelbarrow all the time, you get tons of volume on your traps. So when you go to like a weight room or whatever, you're probably better off just doing a low volume and some real high weight, much higher weight than you're used to. And don't even worry about volume because you're getting all that nucleus upgrade volume just on a regular basis with your lifestyle, right? So factor that in. And, this goes for any profession. I knew a guy that had the hugest calf muscles I've ever seen, bigger than any pro bodybuilder. And that was the only muscles on his whole body. And it was because of a job he had where he was up working on power lines and he was standing on his toes on the edge of these little pegs all day, for the most part, hours and hours on end, for years on end. And he must have had pretty good calf genetics. But just that lifestyle resulted in the biggest, bulgiest, most muscular calves I have ever seen in real life. And this was years after he didn't even have that job anymore. So if you don't think like, increased nucleus number and stuff is real, I don't know what to tell you. That's one of the many observations in my life that showed me that high volume training would have interesting long-term payoffs by increasing certain factors within the muscle. So, a lot of people would say, "Oh no, all that physical labor is just junk. It's just what do they call it? Junk volume." Well, I don't count it as weightlifting sets, but the metabolic changes in muscles and the metabolic changes in my metabolism, the increased insulin sensitivity. I mean, also I'm working in a sauna every time I'm working, and I think that improves insulin sensitivity too. So obviously you got to consider your environment, what kind of work you're doing, what is all the volume, what does it tax on your body, what does it not tax. Consider all those factors, and it definitely plays in to your volume. So those of you that have active physical lifestyles, whether it's manual labor or something else, some sport you do or some hobby you're involved with, like if you ride dirt bikes all the time and you do like motocross, your quads, for example, get a lot of work. If you ride a bicycle all the time, same kind of thing. That volume plays into it. If I rode a bicycle all the time real hard and I worked my quads and burned them on a regular basis with volume, no doubt they're already going to be striated. They're going to have separation and pop and all these things going on. So if I throw in weight training, I'm not going to do a lot of volume on my quads. I'm just going to go real heavy, okay, to get the other side of it going in your favor. These are just examples of thoughts of ways to put things together.